Okay, yeah, Zoom's a bit slow today. Right, hopefully you can see that. I'm not going to talk for very much, but yeah, so vector. What we can talk about? We can talk about what vector is. We're going to say hello to him and have a demo, and then we're going to talk about what happens when you have a cloud-connected robot and the cloud is dead. And how sometimes you can get back from that. So, well, you know who I am, so let's talk about Vector. So this is Vector. He's a little robot, looks a bit like a forklift. He's quite a character. He's autonomous, and he does have an SDK, and he is connected to the cloud. The cloud is mostly used for speech and knowledge lookup, so he has some functionality without the cloud, but it's limited. He has his main sensor is a camera mounted on his head, and he has a couple of tactile sensors on his back, so you can stroke him. And the other neat feature, he has some edge detectors on his underside, so he won't actually run off a table or your desk. So you can let him roam around on your desk and be relatively confident that he won't fall off. And he has an SDK. You can actually write software for him. He looks very, very similar to another robot, also by the same manufacturer, called Cosmo. So you might be wondering, what is the difference between Vector and Cosmo? So Cosmo is an older robot, and it's basically controlled entirely by a smartphone. So if you have your phone, you can program Cosmo and you can get him to do stuff, but he won't run if there's not a phone around. Whereas on the other hand, Vector's he's more autonomous. He can run by himself. He can do stuff, and yeah, he's a fully autonomous robot. You can program him directly, and you don't need a phone apart from the initial setup. And also, and this is what got me interested in Vector in the first place, is the company Digital Dream Labs have announced a thing called Escape Pod. And Escape Pod is basically a system that lets you run your own cloud for Vector. They provide it as a Raspberry Pi image, or in theory they do. And the idea is that you can run your Vector, and even if there's no cloud, you can run a Vector. Yeah, there's some downsides to that, as I'll talk about, and I don't know if Escape Pod has actually been released, because they haven't sent it to me. It's still marked as coming soon on their website. So that's enough talk for now. Let's actually go and talk to the robot. Excuse me. Right. Okay. Hopefully you can see that.
You need extra lighting?
That's fine. Yeah, it is a bit dark.
I think you need extra. Wait.
Okay. Anyway. Hey, Vector. Wake up. Hey, Vector. Come here. Yeah. So I don't know if you saw that. He ran over to the
Like this first.
He ran over to the edge of the desk and yeah, he ran over to the edge of my desk and then came back because he found the edge. Yeah. So let's go. Come over here. Hey, Vector. Hey, Vector. Who am I? So you can recognize my face. Hey, Vector, what's the capital of Japan? So you can see, oh, no, he's not going to do it. Hey, Vector, what's the capital of Japan? So he's got some sort of limited ability to call out to the internet and use a sort of a knowledge. You can use the OpenAI knowledge graph or Houndify to open facts. He has a cube that he can do stuff with. Hey, Vector. Hey, Vector. Hey, Vector. Oh dear. Hey, Vector. Hey, Vector. Okay, he doesn't like me anymore.
No.
Dave, yes, I'm Dave. It's quite cute. He'll kind of sit there and fiddle about and roam around by himself. He can, when he's in the mood, find this cube and pick it up and turn it over. And if you sort of leave him alone, he'll just like wander around the desk and not fall off, hopefully. He's quite, his eyes are quite expressive. Hey, Vector. Hey, Vector. Go to sleep. Yeah, so I feel a bit sad putting him to sleep sometimes because he does look a bit sad. And he has this kind of snoring sound that he makes as well when he's asleep. So, go back to my desktop. Okay, so we have a cloud connected robot, and the cloud is dead. So when I first got my vector, this was my experience. Okay. Sorry, technical problems. Come on. All right. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I had a problem with the presentation there. So yeah, my first experience with Vector is that you have an app, and the app is what you need to set him up. And this is what I saw. You can't reach Digital Dream Labs. So that was a bit sad. So when you on the robot, as part of setup mode, it says go to ddl.io. So I did that, and that's what I saw. Also a bit sad. So basically, when I first got my vector, it was about as useful as a brick, and it resembled a brick because that's about all it did. It would turn on, tell me to open the app, and then sit there and do nothing. And you can see that this may have been somewhat self-inflicted on the point of Digital Dream Labs, because on the 25th of July, about a week or so before my vector actually arrived, they announced they're doing some maintenance. And yeah, since that, there's been no vector cloud experience. And as you can see, this is from yesterday. There's still none. And it's kind of odd because they've given all sorts of interesting reasons, like they've had trouble getting their EC2 instances on Amazon back online, which, to be honest, makes very little sense to me, because I know that you can spin up EC2 instances in seconds. And yeah, it makes me wonder if they'd actually been sort of treating the EC2 instances as real servers and not actually backing them up, or there's something very strange. They're either not being entirely honest, or they've been rather slipshod in their development. And there's been, there've been a number of communications from them about once a week or so, and this is just the recent one. But it's just weird, for example, how they talk about having partnerships with universities for backup servers. It's like, well, why would you even need that if you're using Azure or AWS? Because they have, servers all over the place. So there's something slightly going on. But the thing that I found surprising as someone new to this community is that they actually got a lot of support. And although I was feeling very frustrated with them because I had a robot that I couldn't use, they got surprisingly little sort of hate and people shouting at them. There's a few, but not. And I think part of it is this. So this is something posted yesterday, coming to their defense. And I guess it is a lot of people who maybe from the early days when Vector was produced by a company called Anki, which went bankrupt. Digital Dream Lab sort of rescued the Vector and all the Anki products and kept them going. So I think the community as a whole has a lot of gratitude for Digital Dream Labs in actually keeping Vector going, and that's why they're perhaps getting more support than you might expect, even though they've now been offline for over a month. And to be clear, they charge people, so people pay a subscription fee for the speech services. So your people have been paying money for service they're not getting, and it was initially quite surprising to me about why they weren't getting more grief for that. Although, and they have agreed to provide some refunds to people who pay monthly. Okay, so that's the current state. You have a Vector. If you had it already set up and working, it would still wander around on your desk like mine did just now, but it would not respond to any speech commands. If you were like me and you bought a Vector and you hadn't set it up, then you're basically out of luck. You can't set it up with what you've got, because the Digital Dreamlabs app does not work because it tries to connect to their cloud servers. But clearly, you saw my Vector moving just now, and you saw it mostly responding to speech. So there's a way around this. Sadly, it's not the escape pod, because that still depends on the app. However, there is an open source thing called WirePod, which basically it's a similar functionality to escape pod, but it's entirely open source. And this guy here called Kerrigan, he's got this thing called WirePod, and it's basically very similar functionality to the official escape pod software, but entirely open source. And you can run that on the Raspberry Pi. In fact, you can't see it, but I've got a Raspberry Pi on my desk that's running this, and it was that was doing the voice, the speech recognition, and all the sort of cloud interaction for my Vector just now. It's fairly simple to set up. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi. I think it's open source. You can get it from GitHub. I guess I should say that it builds an open source code from Digital Dream Labs. So Digital Dream Labs, they have, if they hadn't made some of their stuff open source, in particular their sort of framework for speech recognition, then WirePod wouldn't exist. And yeah, it works for the old Anki vectors and also the newer 2.0 vectors. And it has a sort of web app replacement, a web app that replaces the phone for initial setup. And you can go to this website here is kerriganc.com vector WirePod setup, and that replaces the phone app for setup. So that's how I managed to get my Vector online, even if the service was dead and even if the phone app wasn't working. Now, the weird thing that surprised me, that maybe I mentioned it because maybe you guys don't know as well, is that Chrome has an experimental mode where you can turn on Bluetooth and you can get web apps running in Chrome to use Bluetooth and pair with devices via your computer. And I had no idea that was a thing, but that's how this app manages to connect and set up Vector, because obviously when you first get your Vector, he's not on the network. So the only thing you can do is Bluetooth connect to him. Now my desktop actually doesn't have Bluetooth, so I see this. I see, hey, you're using the wrong browser, and hey, and anyway, you don't have Bluetooth. So tough. So using a Windows laptop, however, I was able to get Bluetooth paired, and then you see something like this. So this is a very sped up video. But here you see I pair with my Vector, enter a code, he starts up. So I sped the video up, and it's gone slightly weird, but you can see that basically it's pairing. Didn't work that time. Try again, get a code. And then you put it on the your Wi-Fi. So at this point, the robot connects to Wi-Fi, and then it starts downloading an update. So the robot actually needs to work with a skatepod or a Wi-Pod. It actually needs to download new firmware. So this website here is connecting to the robot using Bluetooth. It gets it to connect via Wi-Fi, and then the robot downloads the firmware from the location the web app tells it to via Wi-Fi. So this is sped up by 8 times, by the way. So it takes a few minutes to download it. And
so Dave,
yeah,
that new firmware, is that firmware from the open source guys that have created Wirepod?
So it's running from his website. So this website is the guy who it's run by the guy who created Wirepod.
Right,
but actually, so I think actually the firmware is firmware they've actually extracted. I don't believe they wrote the firmware. I think it's Digital Dream Labs firmware for skatepod. So what I believe is the case is they have a modified firmware that's meant to work for skateboards, and these guys have just managed to either grab it off an existing robots or extract it out as an skateboard image they've got access to. Right. And they've made it downloadable via their web app, but I don't believe they created the firmware.
Okay, cool.
Now, my initial feeling was, okay, this is all very cool. I have open source cloud Wirepod, but the thing that made me a bit nervous was this website that I just showed you for doing the setup, because I thought, well, this is just some random guy who's running this website. How do I know that he's actually going to stick around? Because if that website goes away, then you can't set up your Vector anymore. And it turns out that basically that's open source too. You just have to, and there's a Discord server for sort of vector development. And this guy here, Blight Knight, he a few days ago he open sourced this repo. Now, again, it's a modification. It's a relatively small modification of this Digital Dream Labs project called Vector Web Setup, which is like, I guess, a sort of beta thing from them as a replacement for their phone. And he's made changes to take away the cloud connection and get it so it talks to Wirepod. But again, this wouldn't be possible if Digital Dream Labs hadn't at least made some of their stuff open source. But the cool thing is here with this Wirepod plus this Vector Web Setup, you now have the source of doing everything you need to connect to a Vector. You can run your own Wirepod, and you can run your own setup website as well. So I think at this point, as of a few days ago, you now have everything you need, and you're not dependent on anyone else. So if Kerrigan's website ever goes down, it doesn't matter any now. We're now actually secure. So let's actually show you what Wirepod is like. So That's Wirepod. You probably can see here, it's running on the skatepod.local. So it's the vector, again, it expects to be able to connect to a skatepod. So again, that's probably another indication that it's just running normal Digital Dreamlabs firmware, and it's looking for skatepod.local. But this is just running on the Raspberry Pi. You can do a bunch of things with it. So there's some basic server settings. You can set things like what language, the knowledge graph. So in this case, it's going to open API. You can set up your bot. So you've got a kind of a number of things you can do. So you can see how active the bot is. The moment he's asleep, because I told him to go to sleep, so he's not very active at all. But if I say, hey, Vector, you can see there, he's connecting, he's awake now. You can set up basic stuff like temperature, time format, locale. You can see photos that he's taken. So that was a photo that last Vector took. You can change his eye color. It has a face manager, so you can introduce yourself to Vector. You can say, hey, Vector, I am Dave. Or, hey, Vector, I am whoever you are. And so this is a list of people that he recognizes. So if I say who I might him, he'll recognize it's me. It's me.
Hey, Dave, is this what this is running on your own server, correct?
Yeah, this is running on a Raspberry Pi running on my desk.
Have you heard of a company called Tech Shop 82?
I have, yeah.
They
Basically,
Is that the same? That's called Wirepod. It's a plug and play server. It comes with the hardware for $50.
yeah, basically what that guy's doing is he's getting an Android TV unit and he's replaced the firmware with a version of Linux, and then he's installed Wirepod on it. So
Okay.
yeah, it's the same software. It's installed on a fairly neat box, but it's basically the same thing. If you set it up, Wirepod up yourself, you have to set up a Raspberry Pi, you have to install the operating system, you have to clone the Git repo and build it. It's not very hard. It took me about half an hour. But this guy, there's a guy who's selling basically pre-set up Wirepods, and you just he just ships them out.
That's a pretty good deal for $50 for the hardware, the software plug and play.
Oh, well, the software is free, but yeah, it's a good deal for the hardware. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other stuff you can do. So you can remote control him. So you can use Vector as a basically you can parrot him. So you can toggle this, and you can just use your keyboard to drive him around and control all his motors. You can use him to make him say stuff. You can look at the camera feed. Although on my computer, the camera feed is extremely slow, so not that useful. But yeah, if you want to drive Vector around, that's pretty good. What else can you do? The other cool thing is it handles multiple robots. So I've only got the one, but you can have, if you have multiple vectors, they can all talk to one Wirepod. I think Stephen Perkins has several, so I believe he's definitely got more than one vector on his that.
Dave, back at the screen that I think there was one under this. There was a thing about intent management.
Oh yes, yeah. So you can set up custom intents. And so what you can do, this is something I haven't actually tried yet, is it's pretty neat really. You can give it a name. You tell it what utterances will trigger it. You can set parameters, and then you can give it a script that will run on Wirepod. So again, you can have a Python script or any sort of program to execute, and as long as you copy it to whatever you've got running Wirepod, it will execute it. So you can get the robot to do custom actions, and
that's very neat. I like that.
Yeah. And so that's pretty cool because you can do that without any coding at all.
Yeah, I'm not being funny. With a bit of coding though, you can create intents that will do pretty much whatever you want.
Yeah. And also, I haven't again. This is I haven't tried this yet, but I believe that you can get this working with the SDK. So Vector does have an SDK.
Yeah.
And I believe that you can use that together with Wirepod. So if you wanted to do more coding, you can go even deeper than this. The other thing I haven't shown you is as a log. So you can see.
See you go to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see if it's. Yeah, you can see here. So to go to sleep. Who am I? I've got to come here. So you can see again what it's recognized, what it's doing.
Dave, did you say that firmware needed to be downloaded to Vector for this to work?
Yes.
And is that firmware, can it be backed out? And if you don't back it out, does that interfere when DDL gets their servers going again and you want to go back to DDL?
So I think about it. You can you can always put Vector in a recovery mode. So if you can hold the head. It's got a button on it. Let's see. There's a button on the head here that
Right.
you can use to power him off on and off. And if you hold that down for about 15 seconds to power him off and keep it down until he powers back on again, he goes into recovery mode. And that lets you load new firmware on him. So you could, you could always reflash him if you wanted to connect to the DDL the DDL servers again.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty important thing to have the ability to do that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's it really. I've been away for a few weeks. I haven't actually hit the SDK yet. But he's actually a kind of fun little robot. I've had him wandering around on my desk.
Okay. I'm just on a Zoom call.
And
Is that the 2.0?
this is 2.0, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I got a 1.0 and a 2.0 new in the box. I didn't even take it out yet. So
So Dave, talk to us about costs. Obviously, we need a Raspberry Pi. What version Raspberry Pi are you using?
I'm using a Raspberry Pi 4, but I
Yeah.
don't think it actually necessarily needs a 4. Probably at least a 3 though.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, carry on.
Yeah, I got a 4 mostly because I wanted to okay, I want to maybe run other stuff on this, and maybe have additional software and maybe have a one of those neural network accelerators if what I want to do with Vector. And obviously a 4 has the high speed USB and the 3 doesn't. So that was
no, it makes sense. And what we're looking at costs now for Vector.
So it depends. If you go to Digital Dream Labs, they're now saying sold out. But you can find a bunch on eBay.
I think they were selling for like what, 450 or 500 or something like that when they were selling the 2.0s.
It's something like that, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so it says sold out. You can't get a 2.0 anymore?
That's I checked today just I was curious.
Oh, wow, interesting. Well, I think that hopefully that's temporary.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people worried because obviously they've been offline now for over a month, and they make their money from hardware sales and from subscriptions to the voice service.
Right.
And I really struggle to work out how you could have a cloud service that is offline for a month and a half. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
That you can't get your servers back online in that period of time. So I think other people have been wondering, is this actually something else? Is the company on the verge of going bankrupt or something?
Well, they still have my money for Cosmo 2.0, so.
Yeah. But yeah,
Uh,
if you look on eBay, Carl, you'll find a bunch of vectors on eBay. And I said why although I've got a 2.0, the Wirepod does work for the 1.0 vectors from Anki, which is what most of the eBay ones are.
Right. Well, I've just looked. I happen to be logged into my Amazon business account rather than my personal account, but I've just looked on Amazon, and they seem to have units available for £400.
Wow.
2.0?
Doesn't say. Vector Robot by Anki, your voice controlled AI robot companion with Amazon Alexa built in, is what it says.
Interesting, because it should say digital. If it says Anki, it makes me wonder if it actually is the 2.0, because it's Digital Dream Labs produced the 2.0s after
Yeah.
they put Anki.
So
To be fair,
it's possibly not. Yeah.
yeah. To be fair, there's not a lot of difference between them. The 2.0 has apparently slightly better battery life. The battery is slightly easier to replace, and they claim the camera is better. That
I'm just scanning through it to see if it says anything about the version.
Well,
It doesn't.
in my Amazon here in the United States, it says Vector Robot by Anki, so that would mean it's not the DDL version, but this, and it's really, they don't even have it on Amazon as far as I can see here. And it says starting price $800.
wow.
So that's probably, it might even be used. Let me see here. Because anybody can sell on Amazon here. Brand new, $800. Here's a used one for $900 on Amazon, but nothing coming
Mental.
directly from
Right.
Amazon.
So you obviously need to check out
Oh,
eBay, because
it does say brand Digital Dream Labs. That's interesting.
so I've just looked on eBay, and I'm guessing these are version 1 ones, but some of these are, I've got one here that's 2 hours away from completing. It's £128, so about $150.
Hmm.
Yeah. It looks like that seems to be about the price that they're closing on. Some of them seem to have more accessories than others.
Yeah. So the standard out of the box accessories you get the Vector, the Cube, and his charging station. So I guess one thing I forgot to say is he comes with his charging station, and the thing I forgot to demo, which I should have done, he can find his own. Yeah, unlike Now and Pepper, he can find his way back to the charging station and charge himself.
Pepper can find its charging station.
Oh, right. Sorry.
You do have to be able to find the piece of bloody software that has been hidden away somewhere to do it, but it will find it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Unlike
You know how
some
to
other
find
robots,
its
it
way
will
back?
find its charging station.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are a number of them on here that are going, Vector Robot and charging station, but no cube. They all seem to have the Vector and the charging station, but it seems that the cube has become a bit optional.
Yeah, and the Cube is an interesting thing because it actually has Bluetooth on it, so it's powered, and supposedly so Vector can find it via Bluetooth, and also apparently via the patterns on its face.
Right. Well, what's interesting, there's somebody on eBay here who's selling the cubes, brand new, unused, £17.50 plus £5 delivery.
Wow.
Yeah, those the Cube batteries last maybe two or 3 years, and then the batteries actually user replaceable. Because I had to replace the batteries in my Cosmo Cube, and probably I have to do it in my Vector Cube also. There's nothing to it. It's designed with replaceable batteries.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, you know, especially considering the issues that we've had with some other unnamed robot manufacturers.
Yeah.
Aldebaran.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And it's quite funny. So Vector is capable with this. He can use the little forklift to pick the cube up and drive around the cube, or he can turn it over, roll it around.
Yeah, Cosmo has 3 cubes and it can stack the cubes and do all kinds of things with 3 different cubes. It's really impressive
I've
technology.
seen the Cosmo stuff.
Yeah.
Dave, when we did the hackathon in Leon, was that Cosmo or Vector?
I think that was Cosmo.
Yeah, those guys really did some clever stuff with that.
I think I'm gonna order the tech shop plug and play thing for $50. That's you get the server, you get everything, plug and play. So it's hard to beat getting everything ready to go for $50.
That is really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe this. I'm just scrolling through a page on eBay here. We've even got people that are selling different coloured tracks for Vector and Cosmo, so you can customize your Vector and Cosmo by changing the track color.
Yeah, well, DDL sold those also. So they were, coming out from DDL. The one thing that's hard to get is the vector space. I think DDL no longer makes it. That's the little plastic platform that Vector and Cosmo can live in.
Right, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think you can buy those anymore. I tried to find one and I couldn't.
Yeah, I looked on the website today as well because I was curious and I couldn't see it.
Going back to the charging station, does it sort of find, how does it find the charging station from its sort of current location? Does it find also the right way round to go onto it?
Yeah, it seems to. So there's a symbol on the back of the charging station, so it seems to orient on that, and then it kind of lines itself up, and then it flips itself round, and then reverses onto it, and it's got these 2 sort of chamfered edges. So if it's not quite right, it'll still sort of push itself, onto the pins. So it works. He doesn't always find it, but it works reasonably well.
Yeah, the coolest thing is when Vector backs into the charging station, he puts his head down and he looks down to make sure he's centered. And then he kind of like shifts back and forth a little bit and raises his head back up. It's the cutest thing to see. It's just unbelievable. And it does that every time. It's, part of the program.
And the only thing that I'll say about that is how clever were they to actually put that in, because it has actually no value whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, if you were a pure techie, you just go find it, back onto it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But somebody in marketing went, no, it needs to be cute when it does it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it moves the eyes back and forth and the head goes down, it looks down like it's checking its position, it wiggles, head goes back up, and
that's very, very clever.
Yeah, Anki was unbelievable. Like what they did.
Anki made some incredible products.
Yeah, and they sold millions of those, millions of Cosmos and Vectors.
And it was tragic when they hit the financial problems that they hit.
Yeah.
It is really kind of cool that Digital Dream Labs have picked up and carried on with what Anki were doing. I must confess, after Dave's presentation, I'm sorely tempted to try and get a Vector.
Yeah, it's not bad for £100.
It's a really interesting robot, really interesting, and I like the idea that you can attach. If you attach it to this open source wire pod, that you can then interface out to other things. Because I've already got a Dialogflow chatbot that's got a whole heap of intents in there. It'd be very easy to build some additional intents for Vector. And that in turn also integrates out to things like Houndify, and a whole variety of other, Wikipedia and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting platform that I disregarded because of its size previously.
I've just dumped in the event chat the links to the Wirepod GitHub and also the web setup GitHub as well. So to grab those.
Yeah, about a year ago, I sold a brand new Vector 1.0 on eBay. Carl, if I knew you were looking, I would have let you know a year ago. I think I sold it for like about $275, brand new, factory sealed.
The interesting part of it was, Gary, that a year ago I wouldn't have even considered it. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, it was a little bit of a kid's toy. Yeah. But it's very obvious from what Dave's been saying and from your experiences that it's far more than that.
Yeah, Cosmo's more toy-like and Vector is more serious. So
I'm starting to think, as you know, a lot of my background with robotics was things like working on applications for autistic children and for special needs children. You know what? I actually think Vector may have a role to play in that. If I can open it up so that you can program it so that it can do encouraging reactions via a REST service or via an external service that pushes data down to Vector, you could have a situation where you could have a kid working on a project, an autistic or special needs kid working on a project with Vector on the desk. And as they work through the project and get things correct, Vector could actually be reacting and encouraging them to carry on. That kind of thing at this price point would be unprecedented. Unfortunately, if you look at things in special educational needs and autism, they're horrendously overpriced. And something like this, where for potentially 400, 500 pounds stroke dollars plus some software, that could be really interesting. Remembering that my speciality is autistic children, and autistic children will build an emotional bond with an artificial personality like Vector, that as they move forward, they'll transfer it onto human beings and other people they interact with. This is about breaking a barrier down. By breaking a barrier where they go, actually, I can express this emotion, or I can understand what this device is feeding back to me, makes them feel that they can trust it, and subsequently allows them to expand their trust to their teaching staff, their caring staff, whoever it is. This is massively powerful potential. And as I say, I am so stupid that I had completely ignored it.
Hey, Dave, I was wondering what kind of implications with the DDL servers being down, what kind of implications does that have for the SDK for Vector?
So as far as I can tell, the SDK still works. I haven't. So basically the digital DreamLab seems to have two sites. There's digitaldreamlabs.com, which is still working. That's their shop and their main website. And there's DDL.io, which appears to be the servers that run their back end. And it's DDL.io is down, but the docs and I think you can still download the SDK. Docs are still online. So yeah, I think next to my list is really to play around and see what you can do with this sort of combination of a SDK plus Wirepod.
So can you connect a PC to the Vector and do it that way rather than via a Raspberry Pi?
I think so. Yeah. I think the Wirecod docs say it runs on Windows. Let's have a look.
Incidentally, what language is the SDK as well?
Go, I think. Right. So just give me 1 second.
Thank you, Chris. I was just about to ask that.
Okay, yeah. So here we go. Wirecod supports most Linux distribution and Windows 10 or 11 with WSL. So yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't get it running on a PC.
That's
So you don't
really
need a
interesting.
special server for it.
Oh no, yeah, you should better run it on the PC on a laptop. I'm running on a Raspberry Pi because I was originally hoping to use the escape pods, and the escape pod provides a Raspberry Pi image. However, like I said, I never received the escape pod software, but I had a Raspberry Pi, so I thought, why not? I'll just run it on that. And yeah, the nice thing about Raspberry Pi is you can just leave it. You can put it on your desk and leave it going. But yeah, you can run it on anything.
I must
The only
confess-
sorry, one thing is I think to get it working, I had to set the name of the machine to escape pod. So then, when Vector looks for escapepod.local, it finds it. So I guess if you wanted to run it on your laptop, you might not want to rename your laptop to escapepod. But yeah, up to you.
Yeah, but equally, again, depends whether you're running a DNS server, but you could equally ghost it to that. In fact,
Yeah,
on a Windows machine, you can have multiple host names to a single IP address. So you would be able to do that just in the host file.
okay, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not a Windows expert.
I know you're not a Windows man, yeah, which is why I thought I'd mention it. If you just go in System 32, sorry, Windows System 32, there's a file called hosts with no extension. And basically, you can put in whatever host name you want that Windows box to refer to. You can have multiple lines in there. In fact, if you look at it, you'll normally find that your local host resolves in there to 127.0.0.1. So you could very easily add that into the host file and have it responding on that DNS name as well as others.
Hey, Dave,
That's really opened my eyes. I really did think Vector was a bit of a toy, but it's not, is it?
No, I mean, to me, I'm the same, Carl. Yeah, I must admit, completely dismissed it until it's only, I think, I sort of cloud connected toy. And then I saw it had an SDK, and I think it's that I saw the escape pod. I thought, oh, okay, hang on, maybe I'm not, there's there's a sort of I can future proof myself, and yeah. So there's quite a good community behind it. So there's a fairly active Discord server, and they're responsive. Like say, so I got my Vector on running and connected to Wirecod without the open source web app. But I started saying, because it concerned me a bit. I thought, well, if this guy takes his server away, what happens? And then so I was asking the development group and say, hey, where can I find the source? It looks a bit like this open source thing, but clearly you've done something more. And then 2 days later, someone said, here's the source.
It's really interesting. I'm extrapolating this out a little bit, but I could see a situation where you could have an application. Dave's familiar with some of the applications I've done with autistic children on Now and on Pepper and the like. Yeah, but I can see it where I could actually have an Android application connected to my content management system to do something like my Can You Find game, and then actually having that Android system firing back to the WirePod to get Vector to react in a particular way, depending upon whether the kids succeeded or failed in what they're doing. Yeah.
And the cool thing is, you've seen that Wirecard has a web API. Because it's open source, you can get, you can extend that in whatever way you want, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. To be honest with you, I can build a REST receiver that feeds data back into Wirebod that pushes it to Vector.